This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Hey, what's up, and welcome to QnA, the show where I take your questions from YouTube and Twitter and answer them here in video format. A ton of questions to get into today. So I'm just excited to jump into it. I don't know about you guys. Also, a quick reminder, if you want to make sure that you can get your questions on the show, the best way to do that is to be subscribed and notified on the YouTube channel, so you can get the channel community post when I post for questions. That's the number one best way to have the best chances to get a question on the show. That being said, let's get into it. We're going to start from Ohio Sports Fan, who says, why does a lot of other fan base bring up the fact that Chubb is coming off an injury? So they project us to be a bottom tier team, but yet Burrow is coming off of a surgery on his throwing wrist. Most people seem still have them as a top team and rarely bring up that injury. Now, that throwing wrist injury, right? I was originally amongst the camp of people that were just like, okay, well, he'd come back from that, because a wrist injury doesn't seem that significant. Now, I'm still firmly in the I'll believe it when I see it camp. But from what I've heard, that injury is not an injury that's as easy to come back from as a lot of people would assume. You know, there's a good chance that he only has like 80% of what he had arm strength wise or wrist strength wise from that injury. Now, again, I'll believe it when I see it, because Joe Burrow is a phenomenal player. And I don't think either of those things should be used to justify both those teams being underperforming this year, because one, I don't think the Bengals are going to underperform this year. I think they'll be fine. And I think the Browns are going to be really good. And the argument that the Browns aren't going to be good because Chubb is coming back late from injury is just a silly one to me, because this Browns team lost Nick Chubb for the entire season 5 quarters into last year, and they went 11-6. So, you know, when it comes to some of the justifications people use against like why they think the Browns are going to be bad, I'm going to just be honest with you. Most of it sounds lazy. Like, it just sounds like you're searching for a reason to justify a take. The first thing that pops in your head, you use. But then when you put that under scrutiny, it just doesn't hold up. Are the Browns going to be able to be good without Nick Chubb? If you ask that question, it's stupid, because the Browns were good last year without Nick Chubb and most of their offensive roster, by the way. So, yeah, again, look, the Browns takes out there nationally are just bad right now. It just is what it is. And as far as Joe Burrow coming off that wrist surgery, that is something that, like, I think we'll talk about it maybe in the preseason if this thing starts to linger. But it's there. And look, the thing with Joe Burrow is that things tend to linger with him injury wise. You know, you talk about the calf injury from last year as well. So Jay says, I know a lot of people are out on Ika, but what do you think the chances are they intentionally gave him a redshirt year to develop and now plan to utilize him more this year? I just don't think that's the plan, because if that were the plan, I feel like they would have moved differently at the defensive tackle position. The reason I think a lot of people feel like the Browns are out on Ika isn't that they drafted Michael Hall. It's that they brought back Maurice Hurst and brought back Shelby Harris and then brought in Quentin Jefferson, which tells me that you really don't have any interest in putting him in that rotation, because you already got Dalvin. You already have the 3 names that I added. You already have Michael Hall, who you took with a 2nd round pick. So where does Siaki Ika fit into that rotation when he really struggled to see the field? Even with all the injuries last year, he struggled to see the field. So that's why I think a lot of people are out on Ika, or think that the team's out on Ika. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong, because the tea leaves are reading that this is not a team that has a great plan for Siaki Ika. Now, he could play well this camp and get a role for sure, but I think he's going to have to take a role. I don't think one's there for him, if that makes sense. All right, Brandon Goodman says, hey, Q, do you believe there's any sleepers on this team that will end up having more significant impact on games than initially thought? And what they would at the beginning of the season. On top of that, who do you see showing the most improvement between this year and last year? Thank you for all of the great content. As far as sleepers go for this team, do I think that there's going to be any sleepers? Maybe Nathaniel Watson, right? He's going to be in a kind of contained role where whoever wins that Sam linebacker position, that's what I'll say. Right. I think it's going to be Nathaniel Watson the more I think about it. But let's say it's Nathaniel Watson. It could be Devin Bush, whoever wins that role. Because that's going to be a crash out position where you're just asking a linebacker to kind of just shoot gaps. And that player is going to really show up as very impactful if that player is playing well. Now, on top of that, who do I see showing the most improvement between this year and last year? Jerome Ford. I'm going to go Jerome Ford here. I think he was put in a pretty tough spot, asked to be the feature back when he's not really that. I think people will feel a lot better about the contributions that Jerome Ford can give to this team when he's in a role where he's not asked to be something he's not. So that's where I would go with that one, Jerome Ford. Next question comes from Anime Tree, who says, with the amount of years that it feels like Cleveland has been doing really good, do you think the national media is ever going to flip and start praising Cleveland? It feels like we keep getting the underdog treatment at the best case, and at the worst, we're looked at as the same team from the early 2000s. Now, this is where I'm of two minds, right? To people who don't follow the Browns closely, or they're like casual national pundits, or just casual fans who don't root for the Browns, I don't blame them for their perception of the Cleveland Browns, because the Browns have not yet had a breakout season, right? They've had a couple of good seasons, but they have yet to break out. And the breakout season is like get to the conference championship. You get to the conference championship game, that really changes how people view you going forward. The Browns haven't had breakout success. They've had some good seasons, some very impressive things happen within these 4 years. But as far as like the casual national fan goes, I'm not surprised that we haven't broken through, because we haven't had breakthrough success yet. But where I am a little bit more critical are national media pundits who claim to be experts on the entire NFL. And those people have a higher bar of what I expect from them. And for them to, look, I don't expect you to talk about Cleveland as a juggernaut. They're not a juggernaut. Or even as a team that should be favored to win the Super Bowl or in that conversation. But where I do expect the Browns to be talked about at the very least is as a good team, because they've been a good team. And if you're somebody who's paid to pay attention, you should know that. A objectively good team for 2 of those seasons. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I'm of two minds of it. I get where, like, I think sometimes when we talk about national guys, we kind of lump in the casual fan conversation. My beef is not with casual football fans who have these presumptions of the Browns, because the Browns haven't had breakthrough success. My beef is with people who claim to be experts nationally on the sport, who don't pay enough attention to know some of these things that you should really know if you cover the sport. Even if you just cover one team, you should know. Like, I'm not ignorant to what's going on in other cities just because I cover the Browns. I have a cursory knowledge of what every other team, because that's part of the job, even if you're covering one team. JF says, do you think the addition of a 5th quarterback means that the Browns are out on DTR? No, I think people are reading way too much into the whole 5th quarterback thing. DTR is coming back from hip surgery, so he's probably not going to be able to throw that much in OTAs. And Deshaun Watson is still working back from rehab, so you don't want to just have him throwing 40, 50 times, even if his rehab is going really, really well. Just unnecessary risk to do in the spring. The reason they brought in 5 quarterbacks is because Jameis is going to be able to throw, Tyler's going to be able to throw, and you needed one more quarterback that is going to be able to throw, because DTR probably not going to be able to throw, and Deshaun Watson probably going to be limited just by the very nature of him going through shoulder rehab. So that I think people just read way, 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 way. I'm gonna say way like 3 more times because I've seen all kind of crazy takes because the Browns brought in a 5th quarterback. Way, way too much into this. DTR's hurt. Deshaun Watson's coming back from injury. Obviously, even if Deshaun Watson's rehab is going spectacular, and it could be going spectacular, there's no signs that point to it not going well. Even if he were fully healed, right? Even let's say Deshaun Watson fully recovered from this injury a month ago, you still wouldn't want him throwing the ball like 40 times in OTA. So you would probably have an extra arm. So you're down to 3 healthy quarterbacks. It makes sense that you added one. So again, y'all got to stop reading into things that are obviously like just background information. They signed a dude they gave a rookie tryout to. That's not somebody who's going to even have a chance to make the roster. I'd be shocked if he's on the roster in training camp. And the amount of people who are reading into this to the point where they're like, oh, Deshaun's rehab is done. Like if they brought in Cam Newton, then we have something to read into. But Doug, y'all don't even know this dude's name. And y'all acted like that's going to be something that somehow shifts Deshaun Watson's rehab window to like 4 more weeks. Like we gotta get a little bit more serious about this kind of stuff because the thirst to hope that there's some bad news about the quarterback is just silly to me at this point. Just absolutely silly. Jay says, it seems that if Wills played up to his potential this season, he gets an extension. If he had a bad year, they let him walk and take a comp pick. So a mediocre year from him is our worst case scenario, given that we know Andrew Berry prefers to address immediate roster needs with trades, free agency, rather than through the draft. Do you have a personal, do you have favorite potential replacement if he walks next season? No, I don't have anybody that like I'm eyeing because I think who's going to be available at the end of this season isn't something we can predict right now. Look, I think it's very likely that Jed plays the end of this contract and then the Browns just find a replacement regardless of how he plays. I don't think Jed Wills, let me just say it like this. I don't think Jed Wills is somebody you give an extension to if you drafted him. He's somebody that you sign in free agency, but I don't know if he's the kind of player that you want to give an extension to, especially when you're a contending team. I think that's just one of those things where you just take the bite, right? Like, all right, he's not going to be worth whatever money we can extend him to. You can't afford to overpay somebody like Jed Wills. So you're just going to have to let him walk. And I think that'd be better for the team ultimately, because I don't think Jed Wills is somebody you want to give a 5-year deal to. RJ says, what's up, Quincy? Do you think that Deshaun can win comeback player of the year, or would the NFL snub him because of his off the field issues, even if he has a good year? This is interesting, right? Because I personally think that Deshaun Watson shouldn't be eligible for comeback player of the year. The reason I think that is he was not bad when he played last year. And yes, he had a season-ending injury, but it's not like a debilitating injury that he had, right? Usually comeback player of the year when you miss a season is because you had like some kind of like crazy injury. Like Nick Chubb is somebody who has a good chance to win comeback player of the year. Deshaun Watson, like, it'd be interesting if he does get comeback player of the year conversation, because I don't think it's really deserved. He wasn't bad last year. So if he plays well this year, I don't know what he came back from. He just got healthy, you know, but the way that people have spun the narrative, they've kind of talked themselves into that being true if Deshaun Watson does play well, which is silly because I'm like, if you watch last year, he played well for most of those games that he was in. So like, it's not going to surprise me that if he stays healthy, he plays well. And it'd be interesting to see if people flip to that argument to not give him comeback player of the year, because we know that's not what they were saying during this period. Like, I know I've been almost out on the island, like talking about that being true for him. But that's going to be it for Q&A. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.